Language and communication is much more complicated in the sense that there are many rules and regulations imposed, depending on the setting and situation. This course has allowed me to realize that people, including myself, feel obligated to speak and act a certain way according to a targeted audience. For my research project, I decided to explore more of the idea of how African American speakers change their rate of speech in a given environment and why. This first piqued my interest when a student brought up an example in lecture where she talked about how she felt the need to speak formally to a bus driver, but when the bus driver spoke back to her in an informal tone, she no longer felt the need to speak formally to the bus driver. And I just feel like this is an interesting topic because it just highlights the idea that we have a set vocabulary for different audiences, and people don't think about these things. This happens daily with interview settings, presentations, family settings, as well as with professors. But what pulled me into this topic was that this topic is really underrated, and it's something that just happens, and people don't process what's going on. That's why I chose to conduct research on the rate of speech of African American speakers in a classroom setting, which I will be directing to those who identify as African American speakers and those who identify as educators. I will be conducting research on African American students who are enrolled in Black Study courses at UCSB. I will observe and analyze African American speakers as well as non-African American speakers and record their conversations as well as transcribe them to analyze and come to my conclusion about how African American culture ties into all this. I expect to see African American speakers speak faster in a classroom setting as well than in a casual setting. Some keywords I would like to associate with my project would be African American English, rate of speech, classroom setting, environment, linguistics, consonant cluster reduction, and vowel elongation. To go more in depth with my methods of approach, I will be creating a question and answer approach for 5 students who identify as African American speakers and 5 students who identify as non-African American speakers. I will then record students' answers and transcribe them. This would allow me to analyze the students' response and collect data to help me come to my conclusion on African American speech rates and social influences as well as cultural influences. There have been past studies that have done similar research to my topic. An example is by Nelson et al. His online article is called Comprehension of Standard English and Varied Speaking Rates by Children Whose Major Dialects is Black English. And basically, this article is about Black English speaking students, and he argues that they would be less proficient in decoding standard English, particularly when difficulty increases, by making sentences more complicated or speech more rapid. His method of approach was measuring Black English speaking students from ages 5 to 9 and their comprehension of standard English. He did this by measuring 4 groups of 8 sentences divided by 2 difficulty levels in a classroom setting. And he evaluated that there are 4 different speaking rates from fast to slow. His results showed that Black English speaking students had more difficulty comprehending standard English than standard English speaking students. And there are differences in the age groups as well. To conclude his findings, he suggested that there should be programs installed to help Black English speaking students improve their speech rates as well as their level of comprehension. This study goes hand in hand with my choice because as there are a lot of similar ideas, their differences are what stand out to me because I would be conducting research on college students where Nelson conducted research on children. I also want to focus instead of focusing more on comprehension, I would like to focus more on the idea of like how African American culture is tied into all of this, talking about vowel elongation, consonant cluster reduction, how it ties into slang as well as African American culture. The class readings have also helped me formulate my ideas into this project as well. An idea that Kress et al. Brings up in Learning Through Serving is that service learning courses such as this one has benefits to gain from. There have been studies that show that students who engage community service-based learning show improvements in their social skills as well as their moral and ethical thought processes. I would like to incorporate Kress's ideas into my research project by suggesting that college students need to be exposed to more service learning courses to improve themselves as individuals and as well as students.